Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Does your warehouse waste time and money managing forklift batteries? EnerSys can energize your operations with a customized solution, delivering the power you need while minimizing ownership costs. EnerSys starts by analyzing your operations and then selecting from their comprehensive range of battery and charger technologies, develops a truly optimized system tailored to your needs. EnerSys gives you the power to increase productivity and profitability. See how EnerSys puts power in motion for you at enersys.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to have two guests. Very excited to have these two guys on here. I'm seeing them everywhere on LinkedIn and with their new podcast as well, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it's going to be Dan Coll from Fulfillment IQ. He's a partner there. And Ninad Acharya, who is a co-founder and CEO at Fulfillment IQ as well. So we're going to talk to them a little bit about their backgrounds. Interested to hear, where they kind of came from and how they came together to start this company called Fulfillment IQ, which I certainly have been seeing a lot popping up lately on my LinkedIn feed, and very interesting to kind of dig into this and get their thoughts too on what's going on in our space and kind of what's exciting for them for the future of their space and what they're hearing as well as they're rolling out this great podcast too. So Dan and Ninad, thank you for joining the show, and how are you guys doing?
Thank you very much, Ken. We are doing great. I'll speak for myself. I'm doing really good, and Dan can speak for himself. But I am doing really well. Super excited to be here. I've been listening to your podcast, and before coming on to the podcast, listen to a lot of episodes. Love what you are doing.
Thank you.
Power to the content creator team out there that we got, all the folks, and it's a small community, so we all got to stick tight and make it happen. So super excited to be here. And as far as the LinkedIn is concerned, all the noise that we have been making, all the credit goes to our marketing team and the content team. Just some phenomenal work on that side.
Yeah, absolutely. And happy to have you guys both on the show and be doing this and collaborating here a little bit and hearing your thoughts on the industry. So why don't, before we kind of get into Fulfillment IQ and what it is that you guys are doing, I'm interested to hear a little bit about your backgrounds and how that kind of led up to the founding of this company. So I guess whoever wants to start with their background, feel free.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Kevin. Okay. And again, great to be here. Thanks for having us on. I've been in the eCom fulfillment space for a little over 20 years. I don't want to give an exact date to age myself, but over 20 years. I owned a retail chain of shipping stores, kind of like the UPS store model. And one day a guy came into my store and he said, "Hey, Dan, I've got this new book that's launching and I need someone to do fulfillment for me. Do you know anyone who would do it?" And I was like, "I'll do it for you." Right? I mean, I just did the entrepreneurial mode kicked in and I'm like, "I'll do it for you." So I had to go home and Google what the heck did I just say I was going to do, right? So I started a direct-to-consumer 3PL e-commerce fulfillment company in 2003 in the basement of a bridal shop. So no loading docks, no forklifts, just brute strength and heroics from the team to make that happen. Ended up having that company for 10 years, expanded overseas, and sold the company in 2013. Took a little bit of time off and then joined a company. I'm a Pittsburgh guy, so joined one of the top 5 3PLs in North America, Genco, which was headquartered in Pittsburgh, leading their eCom retail fulfillment and distribution sales, so on the commercial side. 6 months later, Genco was acquired by FedEx, and I was like, well, that was a nice ride. But, I gave FedEx a shot, which I'm so happy that I did. And actually, Ninad and I started working together. We got tapped to lead some strategic initiatives at FedEx all around e-commerce fulfillment and reverse logistics, and got to launch what's now known as FedEx Fulfillment to the market in 2017. Ninad was also part of our FedEx reverse technology, which he could talk about. And then in 2019, as the story goes, there was some consolidation and we were asked to move to Memphis, Tennessee. And let's take what we've done for the past couple of decades and see if there was a there in the market. And that was the genesis behind Fulfillment IQ.
Okay, interesting. And how about your background?
Let's go back. So I'm not as old as Dan, so I can say that.
Oh, watch it.
Space for about 17 years.
Good thing they're not in the same room, right?
Exactly. I've been in the industry for less than 20 years at this point. So back in about 2005-06, I was, working in the tech space, doing some testing type activities, working for IBM. And one fine day, I was called for an interview with a company called Hudson's Bay Company, and I was told the job is for warehouse management system implementation. So I go Google. I'm like, what does warehouse management system mean? Right? And the results come back for data warehousing. And I thought I was walking into a data warehousing job interview. That's how I got into this space. Straight up, completely confused. They asked me a bunch of questions about testing. I passed the interview, got the job, walk in the first day, and they're like, yeah, show up to the warehouse. I'm like, why do I need to go to the warehouse? I thought they kept data, the data center was in there. Nope, it was about warehouse management. That's how I got my start in there, but very quickly learned some of the tier 1 solutions. You probably know, like Manhattan Associates, led the charge on developing, implementation strategies and design and change management and operations and whatnot. So I spent a good amount of time, about 5-6 years, working in the warehouses, doing design type activities before being tapped on the shoulder to actually lead the Target Canada implementation. So if anyone remembers, back in 2012, Target decided to move to Canada and open 124 stores.
Right.
So I was behind the distribution network implementation, and I ended up designing the solution. Took about 2 years to implement the solution, and then about 2 years later, Target decided to file for bankruptcy, which was really interesting. I got to close that down. And then, interestingly, the next opportunity, again, working for Genco. At the time, Dan was also working for Genco. I got to lead the charge on doing a 3PL design for Target.com. One of the highest throughput, your podcast is named the new warehouse.
Right.
I literally designed the new warehouse, right? Which was, how does Target operate like Amazon, right? Like, how do you go from the old ways of doing e-commerce to this non-wave, super fast processing of orders that's, based on, to a certain degree, chaos. You have so much volume that chaos actually works in your benefit, right? So ended up doing design for that, helped implement, launched it successfully, met a lot of good people along the journey. And then I got my opportunity to lead FedEx Fulfillment from a technology standpoint, from a product standpoint, from a systems and architecture standpoint. So developed that solution, developed returns technology until in 2019, along with a few other folks, decided that let's try our luck in business. Let's see what we can do. So it's been a good go since, and I think rest is history.
So very interesting, both your backgrounds. I think it's interesting too that you guys have found each other along the way, because it seems like you both kind of started on this journey by doing a Google search, right? You both kind of search for, what is it actually that I'm getting myself into in the beginning right. Here, right? So very interesting that you've now come to this point, and so the two of you met at FedEx at the time at FedEx.
That is correct. Yeah, as I was explaining, I was working on the target implementation, and just I kind of live for the high of like doing those projects. Almost at that time, I wouldn't say it's the exact same thing anymore, but at that point, I was going through the big target implementation. It's the big, shining star in the company of things that are happening. So I was like looking for what's the next big thing I could involve myself in,
Right.
and FedEx had just acquired us, right? So FedEx had acquired Genco at that point, and FedEx had come in with a pretty large business case, big investment of why they are making this purchase. And one of the biggest reasons was enabling mid-market merchant space for e-commerce, right? Like that, that was literally a stated reason. And no one knew what it meant. And to figure out what it means, I had just heard about it, and someone told me, "Oh, you should be talking to this guy, Dan Coll. It seems like he knows everything that there is about this." So I just randomly, again, we worked in the same company, didn't know each other.
Yeah.
I still remember driving on the highway when I called this guy, and I'm like, "Hey, Dan, I'm Ninad. I'm the guy leading the Target stuff, right? I hear you doing some cool stuff. Can I get involved?" Right? Like it was straight up. That's how we kind of got introduced to each other. And I guess Dan, from your vantage point, because that's how I saw it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I remember it too. I'm like, who's this crazy guy calling me? And and yeah, we've been, coworkers, friends, I mean, it really is a blessing. And we've done some really cool stuff together, and we like each other outside of work as well. So it's just a great partnership and friendship.
All right, that's good to hear, and it's great that you guys like each other outside of work too. I think that's a good thing, right? For long term, right? So now that you guys kind of went through these journeys and you kind of learned about the space and figured out, these different things that you were trying to accomplish and accomplished, several different projects for other companies, and Dan, yourself building your own company there along the way. You both decided that now you want to try and do something together. I'm curious what which is Fulfillment IQ, right? So I'm curious, what were you seeing? Was there something that triggered, like from the market perspective, that you were saying like, oh, there is a need for this? Or was it, let's just build a company, and then it was like, okay, where's the need, and where did you think that Fulfillment IQ was really kind of fitting into the market?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, if I may, right? Like your podcast's namesake, The New Warehouse.
Right.
I think working through some of the initiatives that we did at FedEx, it was very quick realization that we are at this precipice moment of like what warehousing means changing. If you just look at from a timing standpoint, most of the big billion-dollar companies that we now know, right, valuation companies within the space that you now know, got their valuation about last year or the year before, right?
Right, yeah.
And so we could see the tide kind of turning to say, it's changing, right? Like the old ways of doing things. If you look at warehousing systems, right, they have significantly evolved to accommodate e-commerce. You look at, parcel management systems significantly involved, automation, robotics, right? Like all of these new aspects coming in to a point where distribution and fulfillment are now two different terminologies. Like running a fulfillment center is just as different to distribution center is as running a distribution center is to running a physical store. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, the fundamentals are the same.
Yeah.
The fundamentals remain the same, that you receive products, you store products, you pick products, you ship products. But the way you execute in an optimal way was changing so drastically. It's like we just fell into something that's amazing. And it's I could probably keep going on for the amount of stuff that changed during that time frame, right? Like the merchant behavior changed. The definition of a 3PL changed, right? Getting into a 3PL or getting a fulfillment service was no longer these long, lengthy contracts. It was now, hey, click, sign up. It's like the Uberification of, fulfillment as a service, right? And the tech players that were coming in. And also, while we talk about all of this change, there was also this underlying gap, I would say, which is, yes, there is a lot of cool thought process coming. Let's call it the Silicon Valley-esque ideas, right? Good robots, good solutions, good product principles coming into warehousing. But the fundamentals of warehousing remain the same, right? Like it's the operational excellence, the way you kind of execute the distribution footprint or a fulfillment footprint. And that discipline wasn't seen in the market. So it was just the perfect time. It's like, hey, if we go out and just help people, be like, hey, if you do just this much better, you could probably have 20% more savings and all of this cool stuff that you are already doing, right? I think that kind of drove to say, yeah, there is something here. What is that something? I'll be very honest, right? Like when we started off, we wanted to build a product. I mean, I've explored theories around building a light up tote in the warehouse, right? We didn't know what we wanted to do, but we just wanted to be in the space. And, like Bruce Lee said, right? Be water, my friend. So we kind of evolved as the demand kind of changed, right? So,
and I think too, Kevin, this whole space of e-commerce fulfillment is really small, right? I mean, and when you spend admittedly 20 years in the space, it's a band of brothers, a band of sisters. It's a lot of the same faces that you see time and time again. We started hearing the same problems over and over again. Almost like you could just lift and shift the problem an e-commerce fulfillment company was having, or a brand or retailer, and we've solved those problems multiple times in our past lives. So it was our opportunity, I think, to take what we've spent our careers doing and applying that knowledge and that experience to help others solve what was going on in front of them. And and I think that was just a driving factor, that there was this gap in the industry with a very boutique, laser-focused expertise in all things e-commerce fulfillment technology, operations, and commercial that could help accelerate strategic initiatives or help solve problems. And that was, that's what gets me up every morning and excited to help our clients.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because I think that you touched on something interesting there about how you solved these problems previously, and you were seeing that a lot of companies were having the same problems, right? And I think that as a company, like on their own, a lot of times companies don't necessarily look to other companies, whether they're in the same industry or different industry. Like, if I'm shipping pet food and you're shipping auto parts, like, my mindset might be that, well, you're not going to have the same problems as me, right? Because you're different industry, different products. But essentially, when you look at, fulfillment and e-commerce, it's a widget is a widget in most cases, right? So the fact that you guys were able to see that from a higher level and have that visibility into understanding that, like, these problems are, replicating, and we can probably, look at very similar solutions for multiple companies and be able to help them adjust and do that. I mean, I think is a really, really great visibility. Obviously, I think it has worked out pretty well based on, what you're saying that's happened in the past year or so, just with these valuations and the way that tech is entering just the supply chain overall, and especially in e-commerce, has just been this boom and spike, right? So really a great market fit, I think, for you guys, and it seems like you certainly landed on what you wanted to do. I mean, I guess we don't have a light up tote yet, but
it might be coming. coming. You never know.
Yeah, exactly.
It might be a little sneak preview, right?
But you know, Kevin, the interesting part of that is like we get to work on, you know, enterprises, enterprise clients at retail level. We get to work with, you know, brands that are emerging. We get to work with the 3PLs. Like all of them have different perspective, right? I'll tell you something on the enterprise side, like the same logic is applicable, but with a twist, right? On the enterprise side, if you walk into a large warehouse that they have been operating, every operator, right, or every company thinks that they have a secret sauce.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is the secret sauce is ketchup. It's always ketchup, right? Like it's like there is really not that big of a difference between how you operate. Of course, there is certain nuances to your business, but how you operate the warehouse does not differ as much. And I think there is some enlightenment that we can go in and kind of help it be like, yes, it is special, but here's kind of how you can achieve that without having to spend like tens of millions of dollars trying to solve for it as you go towards digital transformation or into the new warehouse. I love the name, by the way. Did I tell you that? Yeah. And then when you look at the brands, the story is completely different. Listen, these guys, you know, they might be 100 million, 200 million GMV business, right? Selling pots and pans, t-shirts, whatever, right? Like something cool. An entrepreneur came up with an idea. They built it, they marketed it, they used Instagram, TikTok, whatever is necessary to be able to do that. They use Shopify to build this stuff. They are not logisticians, right? Like warehousing is not top of mind to them. And there is a gold mine of like opportunity to be kind of dug into and take out that could add to your bottom line, right? And as they come to that point and realization, and we are seeing that story repeat over and over again, where we kind of step in and be like, this is easy. All you need to do is A, B, and C, like build your own warehouse, get a 3PL, get a nice WMS. Why are you running like $200 a month WMS system for your operations that's doing 100 million in revenue every year? You know what I'm saying? Like it's simple problems. And I'll be very honest, I love and I truly enjoy solving those problems the most. I can walk into a large warehouse and solve a problem, but like truly like the level of satisfaction going into an entrepreneurial small business and solving for that. And it's like, listen, I just spoke for half an hour, and the chances are if you just do that, you probably add a couple points to your bottom line easy. Like the low hanging fruits right there. So yeah, it's pretty exciting, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see the excitement there. And I think that's a really great point, because I think, like you said there, you know, it's, you know, many times the person that has this idea for a product, or, you know, they want to disrupt a certain space, right? They don't have that operations background, or, you know, understand like the distribution side of it. It's like, oh, I can create this amazing, great product, but then, you know, I really don't know, you know, how am I going to efficiently or like optimally deliver it to my customer? Like, I'm just going to do whatever I can. I'm going to start, you know, shipping it out of my garage or my basement. And then as I grow, I figure it out more. So it's great that you guys are able to take your experiences and what you've learned from these problems that you've seen over and over, and now help these companies and apply that. So, you know, if you look at Fulfillment IQ and the services you provide, you know, I mean, I think, you know, I look at your website, it seems like, you know, you guys kind of touch on almost anything, right? But if you were to like put it into a box for a customer and say, you know, this is the best way to think of us and how we can help you and service you, like, how would you do that?
So I think, Kevin, we have pillars of success, right? And I would start with, we're usually brought in because A, there is a strategic initiative, or B, the house might be on fire, right? Maybe just a room is on fire. Maybe not a 5-alarm fire, but there's a problem. So we have a practice that is a consulting practice where we come in and we do an assessment and we really look for what are some of the root causes and how can we start applying some of our experience to help solve those. And then that usually then spans out into one or two or three other solutions that we provide. The first is, as Ninad had mentioned before, the genesis of Fulfillment IQ was to launch a product. And we've launched products for to Fulfillment IQ for multiple companies, building something from a whiteboard vision all the way through product launch and execution. So we do a lot of bespoke product development for multiple types of supply chain companies in the space, whether it's reverse logistics, forward transportation, where they could leverage our expertise and our team of resources to help build product for them. And that's something we're super excited about. And, we are a global organization. So we have teammates in India, Canada, and the US that help solve those problems. If owning product isn't important for an organization, and there's a solution in the market, what we call like a packaged software solution, right? A WMS, a TMS, something that's already out there that a company has probably spent hundreds or billions of dollars developing and researching, and there's solid solutions in the market. We help organizations figure out what solutions are best for them, a best fit for them, and then we help them implement those solutions, right? So we deploy teams to actually help them deploy those solutions for their organization. So those are the main buckets. And then something we're super excited about, going back to the brands we had talked about and the SMBs or the mid-market, is what we call FIQ, Fulfillment IQ in a box. So think about everything we just talked about and all those problems that we solve, all those solutions that we offer. And if you're a brand today selling, as Ninad said, cool pots and pans or cool t-shirts or whatever it might be, if you have a problem, you only have one or two ways to try to solve it, right? You're going to maybe Google, right?
Yeah.
Just like we did 20 years ago. What is fulfillment, right? You're going to Google to try to solve a problem or find someone. Or there's the high tier one consulting agencies that are out there. So what we wanted to do and what we've done is we've built a SaaS-based product offering called Fulfillment IQ in a Box, where we could help brands and a startup all the way through the mid-market solve a problem. And we have all these problems that we've fixed in the past that we've productized, right? And we have systems and solutions to then deploy those solving problem opportunities for these brands. And so those are really the main ways. And then there is another solution that we have that, again, listening to our customers, right? Voice of customer has driven a lot of what we do and listening to the market. Because we become so entrenched with our clients, right? Whether we're building their product, we're building a strategic roadmap, we're having them do or offer a solution that they've never offered. These are 100-year-old companies that have always done something really well, but now they want to get into a new market. They want to get into e-com, and we help them build that business strategy and that business case. Because we're so ingrained and we've become such a part of their company, they've asked us to actually do the marketing for them. To do the whole go-to-marketing efforts, because we know their organization and that initiative almost as good or better than they do. So developing their websites, developing their SEO, developing their social media strategy has been something that again, listening to our customers and listening to the market has brought us this digital agency that, as you had mentioned, and I thank you for mentioning it, all the great content that Fulfillment IQ puts out on LinkedIn and social. We now do that for other organizations as well.
Very interesting. So, I mean, what don't you guys do? I guess
we only do it in this space, right?
Yeah.
That's our niche. We say we're an inch wide and a mile deep. We are in the fulfillment space. If an insurance company asks us to do something, it's an easy no, right? Or healthcare. This is where we play.
I mean, if I put it simply, right, like, okay, we are in the consult, and I get this question quite a lot, right? Like, and usually the people that we are talking to are fairly deep within the space. So the question comes up, be like, oh, you do development, you do implementation, and you also do advisory services, right? And all of these things along with it.
Yeah.
And it's like inch wide, mile deep. This is all we do. But as our namesake, Fulfillment IQ, it's everything related to fulfillment, and that's all we kind of operate on, right? And if you look at the term consulting company, right, like you look outside and, I'm going to name drop, because I got no relationships there, but like Deloitte or EY or Accenture, Like, think about what they do.
Yeah.
They do everything that we just said because they will say yes to an implementation. They will say yes to a software development. They will say yes to supply chain analysis because they have a supply chain practice. They will do it not only within the fulfillment space, but they will do it in TMS, ERP, HRMS, be it financial systems, be it whatever, electric grid, right? Like they do everything across the board, right? And so the only difference is we are a boutique. This is all we do. So actually, we don't do as much, and I never want to do electric grids, but the same, you know what I'm saying?
All right. Well, we got that on the record that you don't want to do electric grids. So if anybody ever tries to push you in that direction, we'll bring up this episode. But yeah, I mean, I think it's great that you've positioned yourself in a way that you're, as you mentioned, Dan, like you're listening to that voice of the customer, and you're allowing yourself to evolve with that as well. But like as you guys mentioned, within the e-commerce space, and I think that makes sense because as you talk about these, small to mid-sized market businesses, and as they're evolving, their needs are changing, right? So you're initially kind of maybe taking them out of that, out of that garage into, a 3PL or their own fulfillment center, and then all of a sudden they're changing and they're going through another phase of growth, and they're wondering, how do we now become more effective at our marketing? Or you mentioned the SEO, like how do we, get this maybe rolled out on a different channel, right? Or even like a company, you mentioned TikTok in there, and TikTok has shopping and stuff like that. And I don't have TikTok. I know you don't have TikTok either. I heard you mention that on one of the recent episodes of your podcast. But all these different things are happening and coming out as different channels for the brands. And if you guys allow yourselves to continue to evolve and be able to kind of meet those needs and things, like, I mean, I think that's a great thing because you now become not just like a partner on a singular project, but you become like a lifelong partner of the brand and the company. You're able to continue to evolve like that. I mean, do you think and do you see yourselves, once you kind of link up with a brand and solve a problem for them, that your goal and intention is to kind of not necessarily marry yourself to that? I mean, that's a big commitment, but kind of attach yourselves to them and be able to help them grow through all those phases now in their company life cycle.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about who we are, we didn't go to school or college for consultancy, right? We are practitioners from the space that love to help people. So, when you think of Fulfillment IQ and our commercial approach to relationships is super easy, right? We don't try to, come in and hit some home run and get this multi-year agreement. Let us come in, solve a problem, prove ourselves to you, and then we'll help you on the next problem. And maybe you don't need us for 6 months, but know we're here for you. And when you're here, when something comes up, give us a call and we'll help then. So what's been really cool, I mean, as Ninad has shared, I mean, Fulfillment IQ was launched to the market in 2019. We still have customers from 2019 that are still our customers today. And a lot of our customers, because of what we do, there might be a little bit of a gap in between projects they have us work on, but they bring us in when something comes up and we help them solve it. So I do think it is, to your point, I mean, I think marriage is the right analogy. We don't want to get a divorce, right? Yeah. Maybe we need to take a break, right? And go to separate houses for a couple months, but when there's a problem, we come together and help them solve problems. So that's what we love. And with our clients too, I mean, we build these strong friendships and alliances where, we are absolutely willing to get dirty. Like our experience comes from having bloody knuckles, right? From doing the unloading containers in, 120 degree temperature, right? Or in sub 40 degree temperature, right? And it comes from that. So we have empathy, right? We understand, and we've just because we could help solve a problem, we could help solve it because we've had that same problem stare us in the eye time and time again. So yeah, maybe there's a long way of answering your question, Kevin, but yes, long-term relationships and we love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super important, man. And also giving to the community. It's a small community, right? There are times when people are like, yeah, listen, this is going to be a pretty big initiative for us, right? I'll be like, listen, come on the side. Let's just have a conversation. Let me give you a bunch of bullet points of what you need to execute upon. Like, do it yourself, right? Like, listen, it's really small as our space, and there will always be opportunity to make money, right? Like it presents itself. I've seen it, and I'm I just truly believe that if you just do good's gonna come back to you. So we just want to continue doing that to the market. But the most important thing is, we brought up TikTok, right? Even though I don't use TikTok, I know everything about it and everything that goes on with it and every strategy that is being deployed. And that's what keeps us on that disruption edge, right? Like, because I'll hang my head the day I feel that I'm telling, this is how we have always done things. How can we go change this? Because I was the guy that challenged that norm. The day that we get into that position where it's like, this is how we have always done this, is the time I go, okay, it's time to take a step back, right? But until then, you got to keep upgrading, ensure that we understand what the current, what the market demands. And TikTok's the rage. So we all got to figure out how it's going to all work with TikTok and social shopping and whatnot, right? And helping merchants through that, because as cool as this space is becoming, it's also becoming complex, right? Like with the amount of channels that you sell on and the amount of middleware software that's available and the amount of like WMSs, and like to be able to navigate yourself through this. At least back in the days, there were like 4 WMSs, right? Like just go take your pick. Now that's no longer the case. So how do you figure that out? And I think that's where we are truly enjoying it. And I'm more than happy if someone's like, yeah, we can't afford your services. I'll be like, hey, tell me what your problems are. Here are the 4 things you need to do and go solve for it. And I absolutely enjoy doing that. And that's why we have the podcast, just chirping.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great thing, and obviously, I think you both obviously have the mindset to really be those partners for companies and help them to solve those problems. I mean, the fact that you're just enjoying solving the problems and looking at those new challenges, I think is a great thing, and that you're willing to evolve and keep your mind open to new things that are coming into the market, instead of, kind of like putting your stake in the ground and saying like, this is the WMS that I'm an expert in, and this is the one that I'm always going to recommend and consult on, right? But you're recognizing that like there are so many options now that you're able to, make yourself aware and learn about these options and be willing to be flexible, because not every system is going to be the right fit. While problems may be the same, as you mentioned, there's nuances with each company, and maybe one system lends itself better to one company than another, right? So I think that's a great thing. So I'm curious, we've mentioned, I think, a lot in this conversation actually about companies having problems, right? And every company I think has problems, but we talk a lot about the problems kind of being similar from company to company. So in the fulfillment space, e-commerce space right now, I think what do you guys see are some of the most common or biggest problems that companies are trying to solve for and overcome right now?
I'll go first.
Sure.
Labor cost directly correlated to automation at this point, right? Like it's like every boardroom with the large warehouses having this conversation, be like, where's the ROI at, right? From a capital investment standpoint.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, right, like, I always follow the hype cycle for technology, and specifically in our space on where the hype cycles actually go in at any given time, right? And if you look at the hype cycle around robotic automation specifically, we are going into that phase where it's starting to make a lot of sense. It's starting to quickly make sense. So If you are in North America, because there is caveated, right? Like if you exist in some other part of the world where, labor is still on the cheap, then, technology doesn't make sense. But if you are in any part of North America and you're looking at, what's my next step? And if you aren't thinking automation, you ought to be thinking automation. You just at least educating yourself on what you should be doing, because there is a lot of savings to be had. We are seeing some crazy return on investment, right? Like some tech, and I won't mention some of that, but some of the tech that's out there could, from a manual warehouse to an automated warehouse, your return on investment with the right type of throughput or right type of volume could be like less than 1 year. That's unheard of. Like you should be like closing your eyes and just investing in that stuff, right? Like, so that's real exciting time. And it's gone through that maturity curve, right? That trough of disillusionment to that enlightenment phase. And I think we are going through enlightenment right now, where automations become stable in certain areas of automation, because there is lots that go into it. But from a robotic standpoint, there is some semblance of settling down in the space.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that's a really good point, because, I think, just a couple of years ago, it seemed like robotics for a lot of people were a little bit of out of reach, right? And now, it's interesting you're saying that, it's coming to a point where, the ROI is becoming quicker, and, under a year, I mean, obviously is incredible. It's kind of like, why not at that point, right? So a really interesting point there. And I'm curious, Dan, what do you think from your side?
So, if we just assume that a box shipping from a fulfillment house to a consumer costs $10, right? 7 or 8 of those dollars are going to be transportation spend. The $2 to $3 left over are going to be your warehousing, your pick, pack, and corrugate cost. So over the past couple of years, maybe the last year, you've seen a lot of focus on carrier diversification, right? Previous to that, most organizations, most brand retailers, they would go all in with either Postal Service, UPS, or FedEx, right? They were all in. They wanted to get the biggest discount they could get, all their volume and all their spend with one carrier. And now you're seeing all the price surcharges and spikes and peaks and disruption to delivery service that's been going on. So really paying attention to your transportation strategy, looking at the dots and the pins on the map, where your customers are, where should your inventory be located? So in order to solve that problem, you have to come back to fulfillment. What technology can I use to know where should my fulfillment centers be? How many should I have? What SKUs should I place in each of those facilities? All of those problems help solve for what is one of the most expensive spends on the P&L when it comes to fulfillment execution. So tying those things together, I think is something I would advise anyone to take a look at.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that inventory placement is certainly a huge factor in being able to deliver to the customer in a higher service level. And then, like you just said, on the transportation spend, reducing that spend as well. But I'm curious in your thoughts. You mentioned the pricing and the increase in pricing for UPS and FedEx and Postal Service, and for so long, like, that has been like the big three, right, for parcel. But we're seeing these other companies come up, maybe more regionalized or different types of companies, and they're providing faster service, essentially, right? And a lot of times, you look at like UPS, for example, is so big, it's like, I don't necessarily have to, provide faster service at a cheaper price because I already have such a big market share. But I mean, do you think there's a point at which these smaller companies that are coming up and providing faster service levels and different ways of delivering parcels start to overtake a decent market share that UPS and FedEx is holding on to? Do you think that's possible? Or do you think maybe we're approaching that, or is that something that's, could happen in the next few years?
I don't think there's any question, right? It's not a matter of if, but when. And we are really excited about some of the tech and solutions that we're seeing out there. And you're absolutely right. FedEx and UPS, great companies, right? Postal Service, they do a good job. But now you're seeing this talent that's leading this new tech and new way of thinking, right? How do I zone skip? There are so many interesting solutions in the market today that A, do get there sooner, B, are more reasonably priced.
Right.
So it's just a matter of timing from my perspective. And I think for a brand as well, I think it's also really important to note, yes, as someone in the United States, I am accustomed to Amazon today. I'm accustomed to Prime. And, it's like clockwork. I place an order. It's either there the next day or in 2 days. But they have to look at their data to understand, do their customers actually demand that type of service? We've worked with a lot of very large brands that have done their homework, and they know that their LTV will not be affected or is not affected so long as that product, from the time the order is placed, it makes it to the door in 5 or 6 days for free delivery. And again, it's not toilet paper that you could go buy. It's not commodity-based product. Specialized, good brand experience. So know what your customers' expectations are and how you could leverage these different solutions to do something different. So very excited about that space.
And just to add to that, right, the disruption is coming, like without a question. Again, I'm going to reiterate Dan's point, FedEx, UPS, USPS, like great giants with amazing infrastructure. This all is an infrastructure game at the end of the day, right? Like without a question. So they are sitting on some solid infrastructure that you can't take away from. But as far as disruption in the space is concerned, I love saying it. I said it on another podcast recently as well, was we are one disruption away from everything changing. Like we are, something's going to happen that's going to change it all. And I don't know where it's coming from, because if I did, I would go invest in it. But it could be partnership between the region. I'll put a phone call in, man. If it could come from partnerships between regionals. Amazon, the big A, right? Like their logistics network, if they just take the chapter out of, the book that they have already written about, like they build something, then they basically monetize it, AWS or fulfillment by Amazon, right? They built one of the best courier networks at this point. What can they do to leverage that, right? So as far as like outside of the Amazon network is concerned, there is a lot of cool tech, gig economy based tech. Something's going to happen and it's going to make a huge difference. No doubts about it. And, while I say all the good things about the big ones, right, one of the things that actually peeves me is I recently saw a post online where it was like, use this, and this to save on like residential surcharges. And it's like, wait a second. So you are telling consumers to do pick up from store as like cool idea, so you don't have to pay residential surcharges, but you are still charging residential surcharges. Like we are in 2022, right? Like, and the fundamentals behind it is because these were B2B networks that have had to very rapidly adopt, other than USPS, adopt to a B2C environment where now more packages and significantly more packages are going to homes than they ever did before. So it's the changing dynamics. Love it. Love watching it. But yeah, the disruption's coming. Don't know from where. Still trying to figure it out, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hopefully we can figure it out, like you said, and throw a little investment in there. But
exactly,
that would be a good thing. But I mean, I think it's definitely true. What you guys are saying, and it was interesting because it's something I've been thinking about from a conversation I had a while ago with somebody. But so it was good to hear your thoughts on that, and it'll be interesting to see the disruption and how that changes, certainly. So we talked a lot about the problems and then what you guys are doing at Fulfillment IQ, and as you guys mentioned, you're often looking into the future and understanding what's going on within the market and what new technology means. So I'm curious, before we kind of wrap it up here, I mean, from your perspective or both your perspectives, what right now, I guess one single thing, like what is the most exciting thing to you about the e-commerce fulfillment space right now?
For me, I'll say this. I'll repeat what I said that is exciting, and I think it will continue staying exciting, is the biggest one is from a VC standpoint, this space has opened up, right? Like it's no longer the grunge in the background, right? Like warehousing and supply chain is cool.
Yeah.
People know about it and the investments are flowing in. And these investments are directly being, pulled into bringing the talent into the space, right? Working in warehousing, if you had said to someone that just graduated out of Stanford back in like 2005, was like,
yeah,
where do you want me to work? But today, that is exciting. So to me, it is the human capital, right? That's going to then translate into where this space goes. And it is the hyper focus on this industry, the coolness of the industry, and I'm going to work to keep it cool, right? So that's where I think the biggest opportunity is. It's people with ideas and new and fresh ideas, right? But with amalgamation of this seniority that's already existing, right? So I'm not saying, get away boomers, right? Like at the end of the day, that knowledge, right? Like the fundamentals of lean engineering, that fundamentals of how you run the Six Sigmas, right? We can't say throw all of that in garbage, right? Like that can't be the case. But how do we take that and apply it with this new human capital, the new blood that's willing to come in and just disrupt? And I think that's what is more exciting. And yeah, the technologies will come and go, but it has opened up a door to a whole new slew of talent coming in. And I think that is the most exciting part to me.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting as well to say, because, just like you're saying, like I think, even myself, like I was like that 2005, 2006 time, like I was coming out of high school 2006, and if you told me that at that point, like I would have a podcast about the warehouse, I mean, I would be like, you're out of your freaking mind. There's no way, right? But what has been incredible to see that, and like you said, as that investment comes in and people from different industries start to come in too, and look at things in a different way and start to ask questions of like, well, why is it done that way? And why can't we do it differently, or why can't we do it this way? And bringing that different set of eyes in, I think is a huge thing, and it's definitely like super exciting, as you said.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what do you think, Dan?
So I'll go two parts. I'm gonna piggyback on what Ninad said, and as someone who's been in the space for 2 decades, what I love seeing is the emergence, the long overdue emergence of women in supply chain as well, right? So to Ninad's point about all the awesome talent and all the work that's being done is, you're starting to see more women take leadership roles in supply chain. And I think that's going to just help overall, right? With more creative thinking and different ways to solve problems. So I'm really excited about how that's trending and what that's going to look like in the future. And then lastly, I would just say, because of, the investment dollars and all the new emergent tech and problem solving that's going on, is I really like that we're starting to solve some of the I don't want to say ignored, but the last to be focused on areas. One is reverse logistics and returns, right? That sometimes is that gray, not well lit corner in a warehouse, right? You're starting to see some really cool tech, strong focus on solving that problem, simplifying the problem, right? And making for processing and speed of execution, better customer experience. So, I mean, that's one example, but we're starting now to tackle the problems on the fringe that I think just elevate everything we're doing at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's definitely exciting, and I think that's something too. I started to do the podcast and started to see these things. I mean, my primary background has been in like inventory control, right, within the warehouse. So, you know, to me, like the picking, right, is like, it's not that exciting of a process for me, right? It's like I only like, you know, really cared about picking when, you know, somebody picked something wrong and they messed up my inventory count, right? So, so, you know, just like you said, I mean, it's interesting to see how, like, because I think that was like the first real like thing where we're seeing like robots come in, and you know, it's addressing like the picking and these things, and so it is exciting to see that like now these other in between processes are being automated as well, and looked at in a different way through the technology standpoint. And I think, you know, seeing that is really encouraging to be able to see that, like, you know, the whole flow almost now can be addressed in some type of way, or is going to be addressed. And I think that is definitely really exciting. And the returns process, yeah, especially I've run a couple of returns departments, and that's like the, you know, what you hide in the back of the warehouse where your visitors don't see, right? Right. So being able to do those different types of things is certainly a great thing, and you know, especially bringing in the diversity that you mentioned there into the supply chain, and women especially as well. And I think you know, I think we'll give a shout out to Harshita on your team as well right now for that, bringing great content to the supply chain space, and you know, really seeing a lot of interesting things coming from her and on LinkedIn on my feed as well. So I appreciate that. So it's really great to talk to you guys about all these things. And, you know, I think we could talk for a very long time here, obviously. Both podcasters on our ends, right? So obviously we love to talk, especially about this topic. So it's been great to talk to you guys and learn more about Fulfillment IQ and kind of the journey there, and what you guys are seeing is happening in the space. So now you guys have also put out a podcast called the eCom Logistics Podcast, right? Which is a couple episodes in as we've done this recording now. So I guess, why don't you tell us a little bit about the podcast, you know, if people are interested in listening, what they can expect. I'll say that my favorite episode so far, I think, is the one with Ben Gordon. I thought that was like really entertaining and interesting too. Definitely loved the little joke there about the Shippers Exchange name. I thought that was interesting. I'll let people listen to hear that one. But yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about the podcast and what you guys are trying to accomplish there, and you know, what the goal is for kind of educating the space.
Yeah, I think, and thanks for the plug, Kevin.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It is eCom Logistics Podcast, and yeah, I think handful of episodes out. We've got a bunch more recorded, waiting to come out. It's interesting. It's a learning process for us, right? Just like, you know, you didn't think you'd be doing this many years ago, and Nat and I thought probably like 5 or 6 years ago, like, wouldn't it be cool if we did a podcast? Focused on fulfillment, and again, it's just been something we pushed to the back of the to-do list, and but now we're there and have a great team, Harshita and our marketing team, helping us get out the content, get the word out. And you know, our mission is really to talk to leaders, innovators, disruptors in the space, and take the conversation down a rabbit hole, or down multiple rabbit holes, right? Like, go deep, have conversations that, you know, don't just scratch the surface. Like the one you're having here, Kevin, right? Where you're focused on the new warehouse and everything about it. Like, where you're really getting into the weeds. That's what we really want to do, is talk to the leaders, innovators that are doing some incredible work, and maybe talk to the men and women that you've never heard of before, that are behind the scenes doing some really cool things and solving some really cool problems. So the podcast does come out an episode every 2 weeks. We will make a commitment to everyone that at some point in the near future, we'll be pushing out a weekly episode. And we're excited just to get the word out, have cool conversations. And we really want people to walk away with a couple nuggets of thought or thinking or information that they didn't have before the episode started.
All right, great. Now, do you want to add anything there?
We started it not with any intention of selling anything. Actually, if you just wanted to call out, like, we don't even talk about Fulfillment IQ. Like, maybe just the picture has like Fulfillment IQ's logo on it. But I don't think I've ever mentioned Fulfillment IQ on there or customers on there. It's just, we want to banter, right? Like, we just want to talk about what's happening in the space and I wish I can do more of this. Like, to me, this seems like a banter, right? Like, this is more a conversation. It's like, we are riffing on this, right? Like,
Yeah.
I want to do more of that and put it out there and talk to some really cool people with some real depth in this space and see where the industry goes.
Yeah.
This is what makes us happy, brother.
Absolutely, and I think we can tell that from our conversation today, and I will attest to that you guys are not trying to push Fulfillment IQ or sell Fulfillment IQ on your podcast. It's incredibly interesting and insightful, and the guests you've had on so far that I've listened to so far has been really, really interesting, and I'm a fan, I would say. So I want to thank you guys for coming on my show, and we'll certainly put information about the podcast at thenewwarehouse.com. But if people want to learn more information about Fulfillment IQ, how could they do that?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Simply fulfillmentiq.com. Check out our website. On LinkedIn. You can't miss us, but plug in Fulfillment IQ. Certainly feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. You could drop me a message. You could email me at dan@fulfillmentiq.com.
I'll just go for me. The only thing would be Ninad Acharya, but you could just look for Ninad. I don't think there's too many of them on LinkedIn, so you'll find me pretty quick.
All right, great. And we'll definitely put links to all of that stuff at thenewwarehouse.com so people can easily find it. So Ninad, Dan, thank you so much for the conversation today. This was great, and it's great to learn from you guys and connect with you.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.